Hi, I'm Jillian Brezen. I'm a cyber threat consultant at Verisk Analytics, which is a data analytics and risk assessment firm. They're based in New Jersey. I live in Brooklyn, and I've been working in cybersecurity officially for about a month and a half.
And I'm Wendy Nather. I lead the advisory CISO team at Duo Security, which is now part of Cisco. I've been a CISO in the public and the private sectors. I was a research director with analyst firm 451 Research and also at the Retail Cyber Intelligence Sharing Center. I've been working in cybersecurity, what time is it, for about 25 years. And today, Jill and I are going to compare our experiences as women in cybersecurity.
Thanks so much for that intro, Wendy, and thanks for taking the time to speak with me today. So just a little bit about me. I actually studied human biology and I was a practicing surgical technologist in my previous career. And I wound up pursuing cybersecurity through a boot camp setting. And I found that a lot of women are actually starting to choose cybersecurity as a second career. And I was wondering if that was common when you were starting out and throughout your experience.
Oh, that's a good question because actually I did not know anybody in cybersecurity who was a woman, except for the ones who ended up working for me. So, but yes, lots of people started as anything else other than going into security. I knew somebody who started as who majored in Chinese philosophy. I knew somebody else who majored in biology. Some of our best thinkers have come from other areas. So I would say definitely that's still going on.
That's really cool. Glad I'm not the only one.
Not at all. Not at all. It is so cool that you worked in that area. What kind of made you decide to move over into cybersecurity?
Well, a few things. I was very stuck in my job. There was no room for growth professionally there. Um, and I felt like I had hit a point where I wanted to learn more and couldn't just through the organization of where I worked. And I had actually gone to a campus tour for the boot camp to check out their coding boot camp. They have one for web development, and it was really just something that I was checking out because a lot of my friends do that, not because I felt like drawn toward it, but
Mhm.
it seems like a very good, stable career, web development.
Yeah.
And while I was on this campus tour, they mentioned that they have a new cybersecurity program. And I felt like that sounded more purposeful. And, you know, with the tech industry just growing exponentially year after year, I felt like I could find not only challenges, but professional growth in cybersecurity and purpose. Felt like I could maintain that feeling of being a do-gooder.
That is great. So you kind of felt like, okay, I'm going to go in and save the world.
Maybe not save the world. I mean, I guess it
Okay,
felt
maybe
like that.
Brooklyn. Okay, you're going to save Brooklyn first and then work your
Sure.
way. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Wendy, what got you into cybersecurity? Was this your first career or second?
That's a hard question to answer because, see, I'm one of these people who I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And when I was in college, I was in a liberal arts honors program, which had nothing to do with security. But my dad gave me an account on his department's computer, and I started using it to write my papers, which kind of felt like cheating because I didn't have to use a typewriter. You know what a typewriter is, right?
Sure do.
Okay, let me just get my cane here. Um, no, but so I dropped out of college and found that I could make money actually doing technical stuff. And people just offered me jobs doing technical writing, and then I moved around a lot. And so I just kind of stumbled into everything that I did. So I wouldn't say that I had any plans or that I moved into cybersecurity on purpose. Um, it was more the case that I kind of pulled together skills that I had. I had studied foreign languages in college, and then I ended up working for a Swiss bank. And so since I spoke French and German, I volunteered to move to Switzerland and do sysadmin work there. And from there, they put me in charge of security for the EMEA region. So it wasn't anything that I sought out. It just kind of happened to me. Cybersecurity happens.
Yeah, it sounds like it found you versus you finding it.
Yeah, exactly. So I was the only woman who was made a manager. And again, I didn't seek it out. I found out one day that they'd made me a manager. And then they moved me to London and said, okay, we're going to put you in charge of security now for this region. And I was like, okay, I guess I can do this. I was sitting in a director's dining room at the bank one time with my boss. He was a director and he took me to lunch. And I looked around and I said, my God, Peter, I'm the only woman here who's not waiting tables. So I feel as though I could have gotten a very different experience if I wasn't such a fish out of water, which I was at the time. But what about for you? When you decided to go for this boot camp?
Well, that's a loaded question for sure. There were about 30 people in my class, and about 10 of them were women. So that's definitely a huge jump from being, for you, the only woman in the room versus about 30% female classmates. And there's also the mentor program, Cyber Ladies NYC. So that's geared specifically toward empowering women in information security. And I was wondering if there were any sort of mentorship programs or, learning modalities for really that like fast paced ramp up your career style for you when you were starting out?
Well, the answer to that is no. Yeah, mentoring, no. Support groups, no. Teaching, no. In most cases, I had no visibility into how or why I got promoted to things. I was promoted to an associate director and then to a director. They just announced one day that I was promoted. They didn't say why. I said, okay. And really, I was just making stuff up as fast as I possibly could. So it was all very informal. When I became a director, they gave me a personal assistant because that came with the position. You got a personal assistant. And this woman was so smart and so good. And I said, I need a personal assistant. So I put her in charge of my access control group. And today, she runs like half of the security at Standard Chartered Bank. So, we just sort of threw people in, and there was no checklist that you had to go through and say, okay, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you program? It was all very, I don't know, very, very improv at the time.
I think from what you're saying, it sounds like when you give people opportunities and you have some confidence in them, they, it's their opportunity to shine and improve themselves. And it sounds like that's what you went through, and that's the opportunity that you gave to your then assistant.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I think is interesting is that it's great that you have all these support things now and training and stuff. But I almost feel, and you may disagree with this, that we're putting too much emphasis on training. Like, well, we'd love to, include you in this industry, but you got to learn all this stuff first and come back when you've learned it. Whereas that's not the way I got into it at all. I never said to my former assistant, well, I'm going to send you to these classes and you're going to have to learn this. And then maybe, just maybe, you can lead this team. Said, no, you're a good leader. You're smart. You'll figure it out. Go do it. So I almost feel as though we've gotten a little too hidebound today, but I'd love to know what you think of it.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's really funny that you mentioned that because, you know, with the availability of these boot camps, you now have more talent in the job seeking pool, right? And you may have all of these people applying for one role, and it seems as though the only way to really, you know, weed out these applicants is through their certifications and their education. And so for someone like me who, you know, the only thing that I have is this 3-month boot camp and a Security Plus certification, you know, I didn't feel like the strongest applicant in the pool. And I understand that that's something that differs between men and women, is the likelihood of even just submitting an application if you're not 100% qualified for the role. Um, you know, women tend to be a little more choosy about which applications they actually submit versus men. They're more, I've heard that they are more likely to apply for jobs when they are less qualified for them than women may. So so Wendy, I know that you said when you were starting out and you were meeting with your director that you were the only woman in the room. I was wondering if at that time, if you had any mentors, and if over the course of your career, if any of them were female.
I would say the only female boss I had was one who hired me when I was working for a private options trading firm. And she led the system administration group. And she was an amazing, strong woman and wore these beautiful dresses and high heels. And she was like the only woman who did this in a whole trading firm full of men in sneakers and polo shirts and jeans and whatever. So I learned a lot from her. Um, I don't know if we ever had a formal mentoring relationship, and come to think of it, I don't know if anybody really mentored me, except once in a while a boss would say to me, you need to learn a little bit more of this. So I'm going to give this to you to do so you can learn it. So none of it was formal at all. And yeah, again, it was very haphazard. What about you? Do you have mentors that are women that you look up to?
I do. It sounds like the mentors that you had, you know, were derived very authentically. Mine were a lot more structured. So the boot camp that I attended has a partnership or relationship with Cyber Ladies NYC, and I was very fortunate to have their founder as my mentor. Her name is Sivan Tahila, and she is the CISO of Perimeter 81. And
Cool.
she has served in the Israeli military. And she is just the picture of strength and determination. You know, she's got a lot of tenacity, and so we were actually formally paired. That was a formal mentorship through the boot camp and another organization called SOSA. And through that mentorship, we went over things like branding yourself, like goal setting, and probably the best advice that she gave me was, once that formal mentorship had ended, because it was like I think maybe like a 6-week program, to seek out other mentors. And that was just super helpful information because it broke me out of my comfort zone. I did have to do a lot of networking, as is very necessary. Again, with like such a large applicant pool, you really have to work on building relationships. And I was very fortunate to meet Lena Smart. She's the CISO from MongoDB. And
Mhm.
she was just very generous with her time and her resources for me. And I uh, definitely felt very nurtured, and she and I still keep in touch today.
That's amazing that you've had, so many supportive people that are helping you learn and helping you grow. That's like completely the opposite
Oh
of
gosh.
what I went through. Most of the time I felt like I was doing this alone, that I was having to figure it out by myself, and I would maybe never know in the future whether I'd done it right or not. And let me ask you this: how do you think we could help make cybersecurity more welcoming and more equal for women? Since you've had a completely different experience from what I have, and now we are where we are today.
That I think, Wendy, if I could answer that, I would be in upper level human resources management. But I will say that my experience so far has been very positive. I am the only woman on my team at the moment, but I mean, the men on my team are very welcoming, very supportive, very nurturing. They know that I'm just starting out, and they just welcome every single little question I have, no matter how simple or complicated. So in that regard, I think that I've been very fortunate in my experience. I don't know what it must be like for other women who are in a similar position where they're the only woman on their team, and how comfortable the men around them make them feel. Even it, I think we all get a little scared of being hazed for being new. And
Mhm.
in my previous career in healthcare, that is definitely, we eat our young, is what
Really?
they say. Oh yeah.
Oh.
I mean, you obviously have people who try to break that pattern, but it's very common in healthcare for a little bit of hazing to to be seen. So I've again been very fortunate that that's not been the case for me. In terms of how to improve for women, I think very broadly, like I had mentioned before, the only way for new people to get into that first role is to have some certifications under their belt, or to have gone to school for computer science or something. And the the application process seems to be very stringent, and once again, you have this large pool of, maybe not the most technically talented group, because, if you're just starting out, but you have people who really want to learn. And if you can open up opportunities to those people who want to be taught, who want to be technical, but they're just starting out, I think that can make a big improvement in just the diversity of the workforce.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad to hear that you've been having a great welcoming experience, because I know lots of women who have been having a terrible time, who have been bullied and hazed, and I think a lot of that is because of the growth of the internet. When I was getting into this, um, you know, first of all, the internet was much smaller, and it was a much smaller community. And then I was really busy for many years and didn't have time to hang out on IRC or whatever. But people will ask me, were you bullied or discriminated against or anything? And other than a few things, I can't really remember anything horrible. But I honestly think that things are getting worse for young women in the industry now. Just because I didn't experience it doesn't mean it didn't happen, doesn't mean that other women didn't live it. But I am left with the conclusion that the women that I talk to today are experiencing so much more of this hazing, and dialing and gatekeeping and everything than I ever did. And I feel as though that's something that we need to fight against. And it's interesting that you mentioned that there was a lot of hazing in the healthcare industry.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if there's some sort of parallel between, healthcare, you have to spend a lot of time learning it. It's very arcane knowledge. and there's a lot of competition for positions. And maybe as the cybersecurity industry grows, that same dynamic is in play, and that's where you see, people fighting and beating up on each other, and getting more brutal about everything instead of just sitting together and trying to figure things out. What do you think?
Uh, Definitely worth comparing the different industries. And, you know, I think very obviously the analogy that we often use with computer viruses and biological viruses, that's very intuitive for us to compare like the technical computing to actual biology. But in terms of, it's very funny to think of it also in terms of like who is actually building that technology and who is actually taking care of patients, and how do those people interact with each other. Very very
Yeah,
curious to study that dynamic. um, so
that is that is interesting. Like, yeah, who is building the stuff? Who is taking care of the people who are using the stuff? And how do those two interact with each other? And yeah, I think there's a definite, I think you're on to something. Because we have traditionally looked at cybersecurity as all about the technology and not necessarily about the design, the use, the purpose, the ethics. And I think the more diverse the group of people who are working on something, the more they're going to bring in those perspectives into it and say, hey, wait a minute, what are we doing here? But it doesn't mean that the people who are not directly writing the code are, shouldn't be listened to, or that they shouldn't be acknowledged, that they shouldn't be paid as much as the people who are getting the patents. I don't have any patents. That success in cybersecurity has to be more widely defined than it has been traditionally. And when you do that, then suddenly you'll realize that we have plenty of people who can, step in and do cybersecurity if you change your own definitions and your own limitations on how you think about it. I think there are some in our industry who are always trying to count something and say, well, I have more than you, therefore I'm more successful than you, that are fighting for status
yeah.
in cybersecurity. And to be honest, at my age, I don't care anymore. I'm too tired to care. So maybe that's a good thing.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that as well, because the only real negative attitudes that I have encountered from others in the industry are maybe just a little bit of that like elitist attitude, where they know how to code in a couple of different languages, and they know how to hack, and they have X, Y, and Z certifications, and you don't know anything because you're new. So other than that, I've had a very positive experience. Have you encountered any sort of negativity from people in the field, whether they are maybe they don't know from looking at you that you are as developed in your career, or uh, maybe they question you? What have your encounters been like with negativity?
Well, honestly, I suspect that it's younger women who are getting targeted and beat up by, bullies who are trying to assert their own status and they're insecure about their own thing. I really don't get beaten up very much, although to be fair, I don't have open DMs, and, I don't, if I see a group that seems to have that kind of toxic attitude, I just steer clear of it. But I have had examples where I was riding on a shuttle bus around RSA conference, and some young guy was talking to me about something. And at some point he said to me, do you know what Telnet is? And I just said, son, how old are you? And he was like, oh. So, once in a while, people just don't think about it. But it's not as I can laugh it off because I have enough enough years behind me where it doesn't matter to me. But I can imagine how this would just be exhausting and crushing for young women who are not really sure that they know enough yet. They don't feel confident that they're making a contribution. They don't feel like they're ever going to get there, and they're intimidated by what they're trying to reach for. And I just I don't know. I just want to smack everybody. I don't know. All right. We've been talking about success, but I just wanted to ask you, Jill, do you have a specific career goal that you're aiming for?
Well, right now, my goals are very small and short term because I am so new. I think it would be a little crazy for me to say, you know, I want to run my own security company someday because I actually don't know if that's what I want to do. Right now, I just want to keep on building on the technical skills, whether that means honing the skills that I have or learning new technical skills. Um, and I want to become an expert in what I'm doing now so that I can start building upon that. Right now, I am just looking at phishing emails, checking the headers, scanning for viruses and malware, and getting a good understanding of the company as a whole. It's pretty big. Um, and from there, you know, they also give us research projects to do for the company, and that definitely helps to build upon my knowledge base. Um, but for right now, I just want to get really good at what I'm doing now so that I can build upon it. But for the future, I'm just hoping to learn what I really like and what I really don't like, because the only way for me to learn that is being thrown into it and being fully immersed into it.
Yeah,
How
that makes sense.
about you? I mean, I think that most people would think that being a CISO would be the ultimate goal, but do you have any accomplishments that you're particularly proud of, or is there anything more that you're looking to do?
You know, I haven't the faintest idea, because every job that I've taken, somebody said, "Hey, do you want to try this?" And I would go, "Yeah, I guess I could do that. Okay, sure, I'll give it a try." So yeah, I moved from being a CISO to being an industry analyst just to try to see what that was like, and so on. And I made up the position that I'm in now. There wasn't anything like this when I came into Duo. So there are a lot of things that I would still like to try, but I don't know that I'm kind of aiming for a specific goal and going, yeah, I won't rest until I get there. I admire people who are like that. I'm just not like that. I'm more of a surfer, and I kind of go, oh, this wave looks good. I'm going to try this. How about this one over here?
I
Now,
think
I wanted to ask you one more thing, before we wrap up. You know, we're having this talk about being a woman in cybersecurity. And I feel like that's kind of a double-edged sword, that it's good for us to be able to compare our experiences as women because they can be so different, especially separated by as much time as we have. But at the same time, there's something that bugs me about being referred to as a woman in cybersecurity as opposed to a normal person in cybersecurity. You know what I mean? Do you feel like you're kind of othered by being labeled as a woman in cybersecurity?
you know I don't, only because there are fewer of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So um, I I understand what you mean though by a double-edged sword, because on one hand I do want to be treated just like everybody else. On the other hand, I don't want to be I don't want to get special treatment that might be construed as um I don't even know what word to use.
Like training wheels or something? Like you,
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
or yeah, or
Like I don't
know,
want to be babied, maybe.
yeah, yeah. Like you don't want to be treated like you're inherently less capable than anybody else.
Sure.
And that's the other thing that bothers me is when we talk about we have to get more women in the pipeline, we have to teach them from the beginning. It's like, yo, there are lots of women who have been around all this time and they already know stuff. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
not like every woman has to be taught from the beginning. So
Yeah.
I don't like that stereotype either. So sometimes, I like having comparing our experiences, and other times I'm just like, can I just get back to work? Because,
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. And I don't want there to be any like sour or salty feelings from other coworkers because I'm a woman and maybe get like seemingly getting special treatment.
yeah,
I don't really know how to explain it because on one hand you do have people saying we need more women and we need equal treatment, and I think that you run into this like hyperfixation on it, which takes away from the equality of it. Is very complicated. I think if we could solve that problem, we we would have hopefully done it a long time ago.
yeah, yeah. Well, I got to say, you and your peers, the ones who are working so hard and networking and supporting each other, I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave it to you because, it's, how does that feel? It's up to you now. You got to solve this.
uh, right on top of that.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
But
Well,
seriously, having women like you who are in those positions of powers who can advocate for whether it's women who are starting out in their cybersecurity career or just individuals who are really excited to learn and want that foot in the door so that they can get that experience to whether it's to be nurtured and grow in that first role and up the ladder, or to pivot to another company where maybe some more opportunities can be afforded to them. I think people like you giving those opportunities and giving trust and confidence in people goes a long way.
yeah, we definitely need to pay it forward, both of us and all of us. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. This was a real treat.
Yeah, this was fun. It's great to talk with you, and I hope we're going to stay in touch.
I hope so too.